I am recording.
Awesome. All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're going to kick off here with some announcements. Anybody have any announcements that they'd like to make before we move on to upgrades?
I guess I can. We pushed out our new OPAC over the weekend, so I just wanted to share with everybody. I borrowed a lot of code from Michael's update. If you go, I posted a link to our OPAC in the chat. If you go to www.seekandfind.org, it's really, the code is really messy, but it looks okay on the front end, so I thought I'd share that.
Looks nice.
Wow. Very cool.
I don't know. It looks pretty complicated. How are patrons supposed to know where to search?
Yeah, I don't know.
I like it a lot.
Thanks.
You spelled seek wrong.
Yeah, well.
Very cool.
It looks good, Jason.
Thank you. I've still got work to do on it, but the front page looks okay, so we went ahead and pushed it out.
I love it when things look clean.
And I love it when things work.
Always a good thing.
Any other announcements? All right. We're going to jump into, let's see here. Let me find my notes. They ran off my page here. Where'd you go? Oh, that's why. I still have your catalog open. That's why. All right. So 1705 upgrades. Has anybody upgraded to 1705 yet?
Not yet. We do it tonight at Flowerbound.
Fred, have you done any upgrades lately?
I made a copy of the author's catalog and tried to upgrade it, but some of the templates that I modified need to be remodified. And I ran into a few other problems, so not yet.
Okay.
Well, what we have run into in the past is losing our macros in cataloging. So Jeff always has to be sure he backs those up before we do an upgrade. So
always good to have backups.
Good to keep an eye out for that.
Yes. Because we use a lot of macros.
I'm also aware that there may be some table changes with this version, so keep an eye out on that with your reports. There's a new feature, a new column that should indicate any issues with reports that need to be adjusted.
That's good to know.
But I'm looking forward to it.
On the agenda, I linked to the DBMS issue. I know John specifically wanted to point that out, that there's a page on the wiki for people that are doing their own upgrades. If you run into that problem, there's some info there.
Yeah, I think there were initially some issues with an upgrade, and they have some workarounds for it. All right. So anybody have any comments about 17 that they're looking forward to or concerned about?
I am so very happy that theoretically the holiday table is going to work.
That would be good.
Yes. My circulation department has been really annoyed about that for a long time.
What particularly in the calendar?
It didn't work. When you put in holidays, it would not take the holidays into account when calculating holds. So people's holds were expiring too early.
Right.
They were expiring on holidays.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't go, beyond. If it's 5 days, we have a 5-day hold period, and if a holiday fell in that period, it counted that as a day. So
So I have a question for anybody that might know this. So we have modified hold slips that we use to put our holds on the shelf. It has some basic information on there for people to identify their holds. George, I know that you've done some of that as well. In the past, well, currently, we calculate the expiration date so that we could have it on there on the slip. Does anybody know if there is a field yet in there that will actually show that koha calculated date?
no, we have to write it in. We write it on the slip manually.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I think if the item gets on hold, the expiration date in the reserves table is updated to the date that that koha has the item set to expire. The code that I wrote for the receipts is just 7 days in the future. And the reason that I wrote it that way is, well, I don't remember why I wrote it that way, because I wrote most of that when I was at Valnet, and I only have one library using that same
Is that SQL or jQuery?
script here. What I did, the way I used it to calculate the date was JavaScript.
Yeah,
Right.
same here.
I may have to talk to you guys then on how to do that, because that manual thing is.
Yeah, that's the concern of mine is, it'll start adhering to those holidays, which we do want, but now we're not going to be able to calculate that date, because we have to calculate that in the slip if they're not if they don't have a static expiration date saved anywhere for that.
Whether or not it follows whether or not the hold expiration date skips the days in the calendar is a system preference, I believe.
Oh.
So you have to go in there and tell it to follow the calendar or not. If I remember correctly, I could be misremembering this, of course, though. So, but I thought that's what the situation was: is you had to tell it to follow the calendar.
That sounds.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, it sounds right, because usually they want to maintain past
Right.
behavior.
I know that for some of we have a lot of calendar issues because, well, for a bunch of different historical reasons. But I know for some of our libraries, I would not want it to skip the certain dates, because I wouldn't want it to skip calendar dates for a library that's only open 3 days a week. Or when I was in Valnet, we had a situation where there was a library in the summer that was only open 1 day a week. And so if you make that expiration date skip all of those close days, it means that one library, that item is going to be on the shelf waiting to be picked up for 7 weeks instead of 7 days. And so if you have a wide variety of calendars that you need to deal with, you probably want to be careful about what you set that for. Because if you have some libraries that are open 7 days a week, that's not an issue, too big of an issue if they get a couple of extra days. But if you've got one day a week at one library, that's going to really blow out the hold expiration timeline. So
That's a good point.
I don't think you have that many libraries, though, do you, Vicki?
No, there's just us.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We don't. Do we know if I would assume that feature is just a blanket over the entire system? It can't be set per library.
I think it's a global system preference, whether it follows the. So.
Learn those global preferences. Okay.
Well, thank you. I think I just found out how to solve a problem I've been having.
What problem have you been having?
Oh, the due dates are a bit weird at times. Probably including weekends.
All right.
Let's
anything-
see. Well, I was going to say, if we're done talking about that, there's the feature for allowing patrons to leave notes on their checkouts. I've done some training with some of our staff already, and well, actually, Ed and I, when we were doing the training initially, the first thing that we talked about was if patrons see a place where it says leave a note, they're going to start leaving. Ed and I both agreed that patrons are going to leave notes and say, boy, I really didn't like this book, which is not really what I think anybody had in mind. So I did write some jQuery to rename leave a note to report a problem, and I posted that on the wiki. But then when I was doing training with our staff at one of our branches last week, one of the questions they had, when you check things in, it puts that pop-up on the screen, and that's the only time you see that note. And so naturally, the first question they had was, can we find a way to print that? How do we print that note? So I worked on some jQuery to put a button in there to allow you to just print everything in that note. And I was planning on writing that up and posting it last night, but then of course we had a Google problem last night, and so I spent time working on that instead of getting that ready for this meeting. So I will try to finish writing that up and get it posted somewhere, probably on the community wiki, so that everybody can use that. But it's just a button that'll print everything in that box there, the whole note. And I've also used some code to put the barcode number in there, so that there'll be more information in there. Because that's the one concern our libraries had, is that the patrons can report a note. They can report something by putting that note in there, but then what does staff do with it? Because they check in the item and then the note's gone. So this is a way to, for us, it'll be something that they can stick in the item when it gets couriered back to the library that owns it. So
That's awesome. My understanding when I watched one of the trainings was that note only appears, is it only the one time that you check it in and then it doesn't show again?
yeah, the note isn't, the note is attached to the issues table and the old issues table. It's not attached to the item, and it's not attached to the patron. So as soon as you check it in and that issue moves from issues to old issues, it's really hard to track it down again. So I've also written I've written one report to track, so you can stick in a patron's barcode number and see all the notes that are still in issues and old issues.
So it's not even linked to the item when you go
No,
to the item.
it's linked to the checkout.
Well, that's weird. It's nice
That's
to be able to go to that item and say, oh, there's some notes about that, and look that up.
Yeah. Well, I've written one report so far that'll show you all of the times a patron, all of the issue notes that are linked to a patron. I've worked on one that'll show you all the ones that are linked to an item. And Bywater wrote a couple of reports too after one of the training sessions when I asked a question about that. And I don't know if they posted those to the wiki yet or not.
George, why are you writing code?
really
Because I'm not as good at that as I am at this other stuff. So
well. You seem you're way better than I am. So
I'm good at 4 things. So I'm going to focus on those 4 things.
I just wanted to point out that Jesse posted a link to the Bywater reports in the chat over there.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
thanks, Jesse.
Thank you. So any other comments or concerns about the 1705 upgrade? We're going to be upgraded this weekend, so we're going to be coming up soon too.
Is anyone here upgraded, and what are there any great improvements that I should know about?
Well, I know about the calendar thing, which
Yeah.
is making me very happy. I don't know how it works yet, but we'll find out tonight.
I'm told there's some improvements in fine linking, so hopefully we've been having some mystery finds we can't necessarily figure out what goes to what occasionally, and so this is supposed to improve that. I think that's in this version. Anyone else?
I'm excited for the number of holds is going to show on search results now. That should be nice.
Yes. I'm still waiting for the day that when you actually do a search on items and you get your results on the page, that the items available will reflect what's actually available, not on hold. That would be nice.
That's in development. It's somewhere on the back wall there.
Yeah, we're still getting comments about that one.
Yeah, I don't know the bug number on that one, but yeah, that's development. That's in process. So.
All right.
I'd settle for if it shows it's available in the catalog, it's actually on the shelf, but I don't think that's a koha problem.
I was going to say, I don't think that's a koha problem, Fred.
One of the things that our CERT people are excited about is when you check something in that table, it's going to show how many items are still checked out to that patron. And that way, when the person comes up and goes, here's a stack of books, how many books do I still have out? You can check those in and quickly see on that same screen how many items are left.
Oh, that'll be cool.
So now there's a new feature with this version that kind of threw me back. There is a feature that you can turn on that when you're checking out items to a patron, if they've checked out that item before, it'll tell the staff member, and it's like, our library doesn't like to, inform the staff people about these things. It's like, why do we want to know that this person has checked it out? Or, I can understand maybe the patron wanting to know that, but I don't know about the staff. That one kind of threw me.
I've had a bunch of people that have asked for a feature like that. The thing that I don't like about the feature, the way it's implemented, is that every time somebody is checking out something they've already had before, you actually have to stop and click a yes or no button to proceed. So if you've got like a parent that's checking out 40 kids books, and the kid wants is getting the same books over and over again, every time you get to that, you're going to have to stop. Staff will have to stop and intervene to proceed. So we're not planning on turning it on. The area that's the most useful, that really has the potential to be hugely useful, is homebound services, where you are selecting books for other people. So I think there's a huge potential for that being a useful feature, but for day-to-day use for most patrons in a public library, we're not planning on turning it on, just because it is going to slow things down for staff, for patrons that do want to check the same things out over and over again. So.
Well,
that reminds me. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
One of the settings is that you can have it turned off by default, but the patron can turn it on in their own settings. So then the patrons who do want that, then it's only them that it's popping up for, and not like every single person. Which is because we've had a couple of patrons who asked about that as well.
I have a couple questions if anybody happens to know this. I know that in the last upgrade that we had to our current version, we had looked at a couple features and decided not to use them because they weren't quite ready. Has anybody heard about the homebound feature? There's a feature for homebound patrons. I know that there were some issues with that.
There's been no updates to that in this release yet.
Okay.
This is one of the features, what's one of the new things added in Koha that there's virtually no documentation for, too. So this is something I was going to bring up, and I lost the link now. I've been attending a few of the Koha documentation meetings. The documentation was maintained primarily for a long time. The main documentation person was Nicole at Bywater. And of course, now that she's not at Bywater anymore and she's off doing things with Red Hat and having all this fun and, making more money probably and doing all that crazy stuff, she's not maintaining the Koha documentation anymore because it's not her job anymore. So there's a lot of holes in the documentation, and the housebound module is what it's called, is one of those things that there's virtually no documentation for. But one of the things that, I've attended a couple of documentation meetings. Let me see if I can find my link now. One of the things we talked about at the documentation meetings is what can we do to help the people that are trying to write documentation to actually get in there and figure out what to prioritize. And I'm putting a link in the chat box. There's a to-do list, and that would be the simplest thing that any of us could do to help the documentation process along. Is anytime you go to the Koha documentation, there's something you need and it's not there or it's not adequate, you can go to that link there, and it's just a notepad that anybody can add stuff to, and put down your concerns about the documentation thing. If you come across, you go to that to find out more about the housebound module, and you find in the documentation that there is nothing about the housebound module. You can go there and put a add to the to-do list and say, could somebody add instructions for this piece of the documentation. So that's probably the simplest thing that any of us could do. The next steps, if you want to do more, would be to attend some of the documentation meetings and look on the community wiki at the instructions for how to update the documentation. That's one of the things that the documentation team has already done. Is the editor that Nicole was using was actually an XML. It was a really bizarre editing. It was it really made it hard for multiple people to do the editing, and so that we've switched to a different type of documentation. So it's going to be easier for people to go in there and add stuff. But that would be the first thing that everybody here could do, is go over to that link when you find something that should be there and add it. There's nothing here.
I haven't looked at the documentation yet. Is there any link in the documentation for such as you can't find what you need, or is something missing? Click here and let us know. Or
I'm not sure if there is or not, but I'll look, and if there isn't, I'll bring that up at the next documentation meeting. That would be something really helpful.
Yeah, because if you find something missing, that might make it easier for people to say, hey, this is missing, rather than having to go hunt for
yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Oh, and it looks like Jesse put a link to the how to edit the Koha documentation in the chat box too. So nice. Thanks, Jesse.
There's a video too there. It's pretty easy.
Okay. One other feature I wanted to mention, past versions of Koha, they did some work with text messaging, and we had held off on doing text messages because we had heard that there was some issue with holds, notifications not going through. Has anybody heard anything about?
We kind of trudged forward with that, and it does look like the fix is in for that. So you can get holds notices, you can get pre-due notices, and item due notices. We haven't actually tested that yet, but we're going to go ahead and try it when we upgrade next week. So.
Yeah, and we all look forward to you being the guinea pig, Jason.
Report back, Jason.
I definitely will.
Awesome. Last call for 1705. Any other comments?
Just the SMS real quick. The only one that's still outstanding that it's at sign off but hasn't passed yet is the overdue notices are not sending correctly through SMS. All of the other ones have been fixed. So that's the only one that's still outstanding. It's bug 18990. I'll put that in the chat box.
Thank you.
I just have a question. For those of you that are on 1705, were there any upgrade surprises on the morning after the upgrade? Anything that didn't work? Or
as far as I know, with this group, nobody's upgraded yet.
Okay.
So,
You can ask Vicky like tomorrow.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
She's not too busy.
Yeah, really. If I'm not running around like a chicken with my head cut off.
Or hiding under a desk saying, no, no, no.
Yeah, we upgrade Thursday night. I won't be here Friday, though.
Okay, how do you arrange that?
Oh, I was
That
just.
was long schedule.
Vic's gonna be fine.
Chicken.
I can't get out of my Friday commitment. There's no way.
And now you don't want to.
What?
And now you don't want to.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about Bywater being able to get into our system and put up news announcements. It's like, what kind of things can they write in there and pop up all of a sudden?
I noticed
Anything
that as
they
well.
want.
Yeah, found out about it. I looked at Rhonda. I said, do you remember I'm off next Friday?
I went in and edited what was sent on ours.
Well, now ours was only showing to staff. It wasn't on the
Right.
feed.
Yeah, I tend to copy that and reword it a little bit to post on the OPAC
That's what I
people
did
so
as
that they're
well.
aware that the system's down. But no, it's good. I like having that notification there. It stands out with the red border, so it's
Yeah.
nice that they do that. It's above and beyond. All right, we're going to move on here. We got some other business to tend to. So, George, you want to talk about Google for Nonprofits?
Well, everything went perfectly. It took some time.
No one ever.
Yeah. So it took a while to get everything validated through TechSoup, and then we got validated through TechSoup, and then it took a while to get the Google for Nonprofits authentication token from TechSoup, and then it took a while to figure out. So Fred bought the domain name koha-US.org for us, and then Fred had to give me access to his accounts so that I could go in and do some things to get the email set up correctly, and to get first, with Google, you have to prove you own the domain name, and then you have to set up some things so that it will send the email properly. And that was kind of a headache because Fred has the domain at Fat Cow, or the domain name is at Moniker, and the web host was Fat Cow, and it just took a lot of work to get it done. And finally, I got it done, and I sent everybody and all of the officers links to I created email accounts for president, vice president, everything. And everything was working fine. And then last night I got back after being at an all-day training session, and everybody's going, how come it stopped working? It says trial period ended. And right now everything seems to be working again, but I am still going through my email because there seems to have been some kind of glitch or problem. And I'm going to make sure that everything works right, and then get back with the officers and make sure that we've got everything actually working, and it's going to work longer than 7 days before we really dig in and start using it. So making sure that it works right, and then we're not in some kind of weird funky trial period is the next thing I'm going to work on. And then after that, I'm going to get in touch with Bywater so that we can move our stuff from the listserv that Bywater's managing for this group now and get it all into a Google group. So that we're not having to, that's one of the goals, is to not have to depend on so many outside sources for these different things. I've already worked it out to get the domain name transferred from Fred to koha-US, and then to move on. There's some other TechSoup options we might have for web hosting and some other good options we have there with TechSoup. To get everything consolidated so that koha-US doesn't have, a wiki hosted by Neckles and a domain name hosted, owned by Fred, and a website hosted on a server somewhere else, so that we can kind of get us all into where we're as an organization, we're all managing our own stuff. So
Excellent.
we're on the way there. It's just last night was kind of an unexpected speed bump that did, after being out of the office for 9 hours, it was a great thing to come back to.
Well, George, thank you so much for your work on that. It's nice to have that ability. And have you posted the new email addresses yet?
I was going to get that stuff all ready to give everybody today, but I want to make sure that it's good before that it's going to keep working before I post it now. So that was what I was originally planning on doing last night instead of the back and forth between me and the Google support people. So I'll get that taken care of, and I'll get something out to everybody. And before we proceed with moving everybody from the listserv that Bywater's hosting to a Google group, I want to make sure that I have a message to send everybody saying, this is what's happening. You're being moved from this service to this service. So don't be surprised when you get the Google groups email and things like that. So that isn't just so that everybody that is part of that listserv right now knows what's happening before it happens, as opposed to after.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
So I don't see Michael here. Fred, do you have an update on the website?
Yeah, I haven't heard from him. I just checked the website earlier. It doesn't look like he's changed much or anything. So something may have blown up or unexpected come up. I'll check on him later today.
I thought I saw something earlier about more information being dumped on there. Is that not the case? We did not get anything dumped over?
That's what he told me he was doing. But I'm not sure where it is, if he has.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm hoping that we can get that up, at least the basics up in the near future, so we, launch that along with the membership, get those going at the same time.
Just real quick, I just checked with Caboose because he's in another meeting. Michael.
Mhm.
Caboose is his handle on IRC. He said he's moving content from the old site to the new site, so that's where he's at.
Okay.
He said he'll send a preview to the group next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, training. So again, we want to contribute to the Koha community with some training. I know that we have some emphasis within koha-US that we want to focus on some consortium things, but obviously what we're wanting to do, we do not want to reinvent the wheel with things like what Bywater is doing with their training. We want to go beyond that and supplement and add to what's out there. So Lisette, I know that you had mentioned that you have some people that are willing to contribute in some way.
Yeah, they didn't have. We talked about it at our last system meeting here for our consortium, and none of them had particular things that they were like, I really want to do this thing, but a lot of them were interested in helping do some trainings. Like if we came up with some ideas, I think they were down for a lot of different options. Wanted to help that way.
We were talking this morning and we're wondering if there's any training out there for doing things like dev boxes and signing off on bugs and things like that. Would be nice if it were kind of standardized.
I think there are some videos out there for
We didn't
signing off, but I don't know about DevBox. And DevBox is really kind of my sore subject right now because I'm trying to get that back up and running. It kind of broke on me, and I'm I'm
It
back
was
in.
just a topic mentioned in passing, sort of. So nobody has looked for anything yet.
Definitely, if I can get to a place where I can get DevBox functioning again. For some reason, when I do Vagrant SSH to sign in there, it just kind of halts on it. It doesn't go any further, and I haven't figured out that mess yet. So, but, if I can get it back up and running, I could certainly work on a training video for that.
We have a video on the website to sign off. I'll send that out to the group.
Awesome. So let me throw this out to the group. I'm going to be asking for volunteers to help me with training, but I wanted to have others input on what they would like to see for training in the future. So we've got a suggestion of Koha DevBox. Are there other suggestions that you're looking for training videos? Fred, you're not trans.
There we go.
Okay.
I'm not sure what all this would cover, but about training for very small libraries that are on their own, that as magnificent and economical as Bywater is, not every library can afford it. Some of us have to go it alone.
Are the training videos that Bywater puts out, are those exclusive to customers?
Nope, anyone can access those. They're on our YouTube channel and our website, so there's no password or anything to view them. They're out there for the entire community.
Okay, I have to take a
One
look.
thing that we'll need to do is, when we do start posting some training videos, we want to include a link to the other resources that are out there so people know where to find that.
I think one of the things to take into consideration with training too is that I think one of the opportunities we have as a group is we can do some live trainings, because I know that there are a lot of things that, watching a video isn't as helpful as, doing something like in a room like this where people can ask questions and do that kind of stuff. So I think we need to have some kind of training component that's like this by Zoom or something, where we can, interact more with people than just doing tutorials.
George, I absolutely agree with you, because I am not a visual learner, so videos are not helpful to me at all. So yeah, I'm much better with a one-on-one, show me how to do it kind of thing, rather than trying to watch a video. And my brain doesn't work that way. I'm old.
Other suggestions? Going once? Going twice? Video training on suggesting things.
Well, if we're talking about topics for trainings, I think some of the things that I think the easiest way to think of what would be helpful for people is to think back on, when we were new to Koha, what were the things that we didn't know how to do at all? And some of the things that are community related are things that people might need training on too. Like, you'll hear people talk about things at the IRC all the time. Go to the IRC and ask a question. Well, when you're new to this and you're a librarian and you're getting older and you've never gone to the IRC, you've never used IRC before, just a training on how to use IRC. And I was actually thinking of this as something that people could talk about. And then Bywater the other day, I just posted a link to it in the chat box over here. They just did a tutorial on basic how to use the IRC the other day. But that's something too, that could be a training session, not just a tutorial, but something where people could come here and start in a Zoom room and then, move their discussion over to IRC would be an interesting way of teaching people how to do that. But, there are all kinds of opportunities we have for, you've written some great bit of CSS that you're using in your library. How do you put that on the wiki? Those kinds of trainings are things that we could do too that are beyond the scope of actually how to use Koha, but how to interact with the community might be an avenue that we could pursue.
I absolutely would participate in something like that, because I value being involved in the community, but I don't know how to do some of those things. So
Okay.
Yeah, and one problem with training videos is everything usually works. When I'm doing a live demo, there's more opportunity for something to go wrong and see and demonstrate that, yes, not everything works the way it should.
Sure it does.
That being said, I've also found a lot of I've also seen a lot of things happen where it's like, I'm going to show you how to do this, and then the whole training session becomes, well, this is how we deal with an exception. This is how we deal. Everything is so full of exceptions that you never get a good training on what the steps are when things work right, and the training ends up becoming, this is how to deal with all of the complications that come along. So that's I think one of the advantages of a video tutorial is usually whoever's doing that kind of a tutorial will have a good example, as opposed to when you're at a conference and somebody's showing you how to do something, and every time they try to show a live example, it's how to do a live example with 50 exceptions, and the next one is how to do a live example with 55 exceptions. And so I think that's an opportunity where I think a training video actually might be better.
Good point. But when I'm doing, let's say, a Medline search demo, sometimes the server hangs up. Sometimes I put in a term and get absolutely nothing. Say, okay, this didn't work. We need to come up with something else.
One of the things that I think would be beneficial to our group is, in basic training of Koha, they tell us how you can do things, but not every library does things the same way. We have different workflows, and what would be nice is to, have a library of different workflows that different libraries use, methods, so that other people can get inspired by those workflows. And so maybe that's something that we can incorporate into some videos. I know one of the things that we just had a little epiphany or apostrophe on recently is we have this thing where we want to be able to see damaged items or items in mending on our holds queue, so that we can kind of get the ball rolling on those, and we see that people are requesting things, and we need to get that moving faster. But occasionally we do have times where some of those items are sitting there for a long time because we're waiting for parts, like for a case or whatever, or something to repair the item, or somebody's on vacation or whatever, and we can't get it repaired right away. And so yesterday I decided, okay, we're gonna try this and see how it works. I created a not for loan status for in processing no holds status that will kick off when you check it in. So if we have an item that's on our queue list and there's plenty of other items in the queue that it's not falling over to, we can apply that status, and we're going to see if that we haven't fully tested this yet, but we're going to see if that remedies the situation to where it will fall over to somebody else, and as soon as that item is repaired and checked in, it'll kick that status back off and be ready to circulate again. I didn't want to have something where it would permanently sit in there with that status, because I didn't want other libraries taking advantage of, and they don't do this. I didn't want them taking advantage of the fact that it wouldn't be holdable. So that's what we're playing with. So there's just things like that, that libraries come up with some good workarounds, and we could share those ideas. So going on beyond ideas, I wanted to find out if there's anybody that would like to volunteer to, excuse me, to work with me on training videos.
To the extent that I can, given my use of the system, it would fit nicely with the training I already do for a number of different organizations here across the state, even though it's not related to this. But I've got familiarity in putting together the documentation or the procedures for doing something like that. So I'd be willing to help out.
Okay. Anybody else?
As much as I'm unwilling to volunteer for anything else, I would be willing to help, but not until after January.
George, you do too much already.
Thank you.
But I appreciate it.
I might possibly, but I'm moving next, doing the final step of the move next week. It'll take a while to unpack.
I think I pre-volunteered at our board meeting, but yeah, I mean, you can use me for sure.
Was there anybody that's not on the board that would be willing to volunteer? Nobody? Okay.
No,
I'm willing to help out a little bit. I'm just still trying to figure out this new position since I've been here 3 weeks. So give me some time, and then I'm willing to help out.
Awesome.
and I can help some too.
Who was that? Lisette?
Lizette.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just started, and then we're doing an upgrade, so give me some time.
It's good to see you.
Where are you these days?
I am in McKinney, Texas.
Sorry, my voice is going. George, take over.
Okay, we're on the agenda at, let me find the agenda. Yeah, that was a good idea, Christopher. I'm really, I'm not following along. So here we go, here we go. So we were at number six. Representation at ALA. Actually, John was gonna look at a few things, and I don't know what progress he has made on.
I've put together a number of different things with regards to figuring stuff out for ALA. I will share that with the board. Basically, the costs for this should run us about $3,000 to have a small booth, the minimum size of 10 by 10. That's got a base cost, but then there's also cost for a table and chairs, which is not included within your booth purchase.
Of course.
Of course. And the pricing estimate I have for tables and for the table and chairs, basically the cheapest setup we can get, which is a 6-foot table, 2 chairs, and a garbage can. That pricing estimate was actually taken from Midwinter. They don't have the additional pricing up yet for annual. So while I do have a firm price for the booth for annual, I don't have a firm price for the estimates. I'll send this out to the board. Like I said, there are a few different things to consider. Do we want to consider joining ALA as a corporate member is one of them. My review shows that there's no real noted benefit for us to do so, but we can if we would want. That's actually a $500 cost. And of course, like everything ALA, that would be $500 annually. We need to determine who should serve as the key contact and provide an actual address for the completion of the application. We need to also select locations. I don't know why anybody would do this, but ALA lets you choose where you want to go with the hope that none of the places you choose are filled. And if they are, then you give them general guidelines as to where you'd like your booth to be placed. To me, it looks like the world's biggest, you can't sit this person next to this person at the wedding because somebody slept with each other 20 years ago.
You have
That's
no
what all of
idea.
this looks like, but that's what they make you do.
Yeah.
And then finally, and this is perhaps the biggest thing we need to concern ourselves with, there is a requirement for liability insurance to man a booth, because the last thing you need is to have somebody trip and bash their face on your table and then sue you, because they can't sue ALA, they will sue you as the event, as the place where this happened. And I'd be interested to talk to anybody at Bywater Solutions that will have clearly had to purchase something like this before, so I might be able to get an estimate with regard to cost of this required liability insurance that apparently we have to present before they will let us set up a booth at ALA when we are actually there. So that's the long and short of it. I'll send this document out to the board upon conclusion of the meeting.
Can I make some comments?
Go right
Please.
ahead.
No.
Okay, so we've been doing ALA for a while, so welcome to our world. The booth assignments, don't count on getting anything that you want or any guidelines that you give them. We've been doing it for 8 years and we still get stuck in the back. Regarding the ALA corporate membership, we are not still a corporate member. The only benefits is that you're supposed to get preferential booth treatment, but at the time of signing up as a corporate member, you're put at the bottom of the list in front of everyone else anyways. So either way, unless you've been around since the 70s, the good old boys network, you're not going to get good placement unless you're one of the big companies that have been doing this forever. So I would not suggest wasting the money on that. Regarding the insane prices for furniture rental, what we do at annual every year, because we have a 10 by 20 booth, we have 10 chairs set up to do demos. Those folding plastic chairs will cost you $100 each to rent. So what we do is we buy 20 of them from IKEA for $5 each, and we just leave them there when we're done. So what we can do is order a couple extras and just give them to you. The tables, we can't carry those in without the unions jumping on us. So we're kind of you gotta rent the table. It's probably going to be about $250 for a 6-foot folding table. Insane. You also have to rent carpet and electricity. Those are two things that they never tell you, and you get there and you don't have carpet and you're like, So it's very rare that the exhibit hall is carpeted and it's never electrified. Also, internet. Bring a phone and use a wireless, hotspot connection instead of paying $400 a day for internet.
Yep. That's where at TLA, that is always something I recommend to people because it's just insane what those conventions charge you.
Don't pay for internet. Sometimes vendors will provide free internet for the whole exhibit hall. So you can either jump on that or use your phone because it is insane. I've seen it $800 a day.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
No.
So we'll be able to help out with the happy birthday, Fred.
Thank you.
So we can provide the folding chairs to you. I just need to remember. So, I mean, if someone could shoot me an email, that would be really helpful. And, funding the booth, we are open to taking part in that as well. We can throw you a couple bucks for that because, I think booth space at ALA is like, for a 10 by 10 is like $2,200.
2,700 now.
27, awesome.
Yep. $2,675 for a 10 by 10.
That's insane. So, Bywater will be happy to donate some of that funding. What about graphics and stuff like that?
Let's see. I hadn't gotten into any of that. I was just reviewing the document I put together. Basically looked at the exhibitor guidelines as found on exhibitors.ala.org. and we as a board have not really talked further about anything besides the fact that we get a 7-inch by 44-inch placard with our name on it that hangs on the back curtain.
Yeah. So when you get into that discussion, if you want to tap into us from our experience, I'd be happy to be part of that as well. We can also help you in developing, booth place like placards. There's pull-ups. There's something you could just drape on the back wall or a tablecloth. There's a couple different ways we can go about it. I'd be happy to give you suggestions. We have a promotions company that gives us very good pricing on that kind of thing, instead of going to Vistaprint or someone who's going to fleece you. We'd probably be open to helping out with the funding on that as well.
Nate, do you know what company you use for the liability insurance?
So
or
that
do you have a year-round policy?
I can, again, if you shoot me a quick email, I can forward you over to Cindy, who does our HR and insurance and all of that stuff, and she can talk to you about that.
All right, that sounds great.
A way that we could throw someone from our company in the booth, and you can jump on our liability. And we wouldn't be pushing Bywater. We'll do it as a community, from a community perspective. Maybe Todd or someone can do that, because I know Todd's involved in this a lot. That's up to you. That would save that whole hassle. I think our liability insurance is. I don't know. I really don't know. I'd have to check into Cindy.
Okay.
And this is just general liability?
They had a specific name for it that is included on the back of the application for booth. And surprisingly, I noted what section it's in, but I did not know the specific type of liability insurance required. But they had a very specific name for it.
Okay.
And that it had to be $250,000 worth of coverage.
Okay, so we're like $2 million, and I think our annual. I asked Cindy; she's gonna tell me. It's probably around $2,000 for $2 million. So, if you want to use rationale, but I doubt that's the case when you're looking at insurance. But you're probably looking at around $500. Even though that makes sense, it's probably more than that.
I think we're looking at setting on a piece of cardboard out front of ALA.
Almost to the floor.
With the cup.
Oh, yes. And as a veteran of many craft shows, I'll say take your own food, because you don't want to buy the convention center food at their prices. I was at one show where the vendor wanted me to have $1 million in liability insurance.
So Cindy says that it's $640 a month, and that's before our cyber liability coverage. So that's $7,600 a year. So it's a lot more than I thought it was. And that's, I think, $2 million. $2 million? Yeah. And then they're not asking you for cyber. So yeah, that's just general liability, and that's probably what they're asking for if someone cracks their head open on your table, even though it's not your table and you're paying a ton of money for it.
Well, could you just put $2 million in an escrow account?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you want to look into just throwing a Bywater person in there, but I don't know if then we'd have to do it in our name. So I don't know the details of that.
I'll do a little bit more looking around, because clearly this is something we need for 4 days, not an entire year, because at least as of right now, the only place we intend on doing any presenting or talking to people is at ALA. And you can't tell me that these small little ILS companies are any small publisher is shelling out thousands of dollars for 40 days worth of coverage at an event. So I'm going to see if I can find out additional information about that.
So yeah, I don't even know if you can get a month of coverage. I know all these companies have to have general liability to even do business with any other entities. I mean, every single library that we have to have that. That's part of the contract. We can't even go on site without it to do training. So I think it's something that most people already have. But yeah, you look at the people who are selling socks and like bookmarks, and it's like,
yeah. So there's got to be something out there. I just haven't done any work yet to investigate it, because I wanted to share all of this stuff out with the group before I went to that next step.
I would call ALA. They might just be able to answer that for you. or GES, who is the show managers most of the time, and just say, look, we're a small user group. We're not a commercial entity. What's the deal with insurance? How can I do this?
Okay.
We could call up one of the smaller vendors, see what they did. My experience is vendors are pretty happy to share information like that.
Yeah, I
It
used to
costs
work
us getting a
closely.
computer on the wall with a video chat, and we'll just do it from Zoom.
I used to work very closely with a barcode vendor down in Strongsville, Ohio. And so I might give him a call and find out what he does. He's a small operation. It's usually him and one other person that staff that booth for all 4 days. So but they've got a lot. They have a lot of equipment, but I'm not interested in finding out what they do for that. I just want to know where they go for the insurance and that. So I'm gonna talk to them, see if they have any ideas.
Cool. Yeah, so just generally, I'm outraged by the price of conferences, and I always try to do it on the cheap. So
Right.
Use me.
Wow. Well, we've got a lot to talk about with the board, so.
Well, and that's one of the things I wanted to mention about ALA is, I'm planning on going because it's not terribly far from here, but we need to start thinking about who else is going to be able to be there and take part in all the fun.
Yeah.
I'm planning on going, so I say planning because we took a big budget hit this year, and traditionally librarians from my library get to go to 2 annual conferences with full coverage, and ALA has been one of them for a while. And because of where our fiscal year falls, even though it's in June, it won't clear until next fiscal year. But my goal right now is to be able to attend as one of the people that would be able to staff the booth.
Right, and Robin, who left the meeting because she had another meeting to go to, plans on going to ALA too. So, but it'd be nice if there was more than 3 of us. I know Todd's planning on going, and he said he would spend some time at our booth. So,
I talked to my boss, and he said it was up to me. So I'll have to look at my personal schedule, but I'll probably be able to go too.
Cool.
And then we had one response on the listserv from someone that can't attend these meetings, but said that she was going to be there and she would be excited to help with the booth. So we do have some people lined up.
So
yeah, we should have at least 4 or 5 people at our booth too.
Yeah. The big thing for us right now is just for the board to determine, what exactly we can do. So we will work on that and see what we can figure out. Okay, so we are past 9:30. I do want to talk about the conference, the committee reports. We can, if they're short, go over them. I don't want to keep people too much longer, but I wanted to talk real quick about the conference committee. We need to get volunteers for this year's conference committee, who's going to be working in conjunction with, I guess, Bywater, because Koha-Con 2018 is going to be hosted in Portland this next year. So we're going to work on a joint effort for that. So we need some volunteers for this coming year's committee, who will be working with others outside of our group.
I like doing that, so I would be willing to volunteer. This is Vicky.
I'd also be willing to volunteer.
I was waiting for other people to jump in, but I'm willing to help out too. So there were 2 non-board members that volunteered before a board member jumped in. So.
And I will continue to help out with that as well.
Is there a library in the area that's a Koha library?
So StreamNet was actually the first library in the U.S. to use Koha. Nelsonville Public Library was the first public, but StreamNet right in Oregon was the first. So I think some of it's going to involve them, but they're not a public library. They're special.
I have a friend at the library in, I think it's Coos Bay. that I know that they're a Koha library. She's not involved in this group, but I can reach out to them and see if they're interested in participating and interested in helping us coordinate some things as well, because they're actually not too far away. They're on the Washington State side of the area. So
That'd be awesome. Okay. Last call for volunteers.
Oh, all right. I'll do what I can.
All right. We'll put you in charge.
Okay. I'll be in charge of poetry readings.
Oh, wait a minute. We got too many people now. All right. Great. If anybody else decides that they want to do that, just go ahead and contact one of us, and we'll get you on that volunteer list. And we will send out an email to you guys shortly and start coordinating conversation. Committee reports. Anything from the fundraising committee?
We botched the meeting for that. I screwed up and messed up the meeting. So it ended up the meeting was only John and me. So we don't have anything to report really. At the time we were working, we were still working through the koha-US.org Google Not for Nonprofits. But I will send an email to them tomorrow and try and get another meeting. This time, actually, you know, instead of just saying let's have a meeting, I'll actually schedule it. And send everybody reminders and that stuff. So,
all right. So we'll hear back from you guys next month.
Yep.
Finance committee.
All right. We got a number of things. I'm going to not talk about a whole bunch of them. The group is still solvent. We still have money. Our final reconciled balance for September, trying to read this in very small type because I've only got it on half my screen, is about $1,450. With regard to preliminary October income, we had no income, and it's estimated we spent about $220, $215 of which was an identified long outstanding invoice to Nichols for the consulting work they had done, as well as the domain name, one of the domain name registrations for 2017. I worked with the board, we got that straightened away, and Nichols has now been paid, so we estimate the ending balance for October to be about $1,250. A lot of things are either on track or completed. Everything has been entered into new cash through the end of October. I will be sending out an invitation to the board and to the finance committee if anybody is interested on learning more about how new cash has been organized to work with our finances. The goal for reporting compliance is also on track. This has changed slightly. I thought there was only going to necessarily be 501c3 compliance. There's more than that because we also have reporting obligations to our state of incorporation, that is to say, Kansas. We have to file an annual report with them, as well as filing any necessary governmental, federal government forms. So this turned from 501c3 to reporting. The Finance Committee is individually looking and identifying various sites to help us put together a calendar and a compliance documentation portal. This looks not to be so much of a calendar because it looks like we only have two things to worry about, the annual report and the Form 990N with the feds. It looks to be much more of a documentation / best practices document that will help us identify what we need to do. I'm in the process of crafting a budget for next year with what little information I have. A call went out to the board for past and future, for past expenditures and future expected expenditures. We've got two very large but unknown impacts, which include the positive impact of membership, paid membership starting in January, but we also have the very difficult task of estimating 218 conference expenditures. Difficult because this will be the first time in which I believe, or at least my first time since involvement with the organization, that we will be working with the international conference, and that it's hard to be able to quantify those. So the board, we need to talk about that more at the next board meeting. I will be putting together a budget for review by the Finance Committee. It will be sent to the board on November 30th for their December meeting for review. Financial institution migration, much like George in the G Suite application, I'm running into a few, they're not really stumbling blocks, but they're things we need to talk about and that we need to have officially documented before we can get that taken care of. I've met with 2 brick and mortars so far. I'm meeting with the 3rd by the end of this week, and I've identified 1 online institution that we might be able to use. The goal has been revised with a recommendation to be made to the board by November 30th and migration hopefully completed by the end of this calendar year. A few other things, I've taken all of the documentation I got from Robin and I've scanned it. It's all been sent over now to our new Google for Nonprofits. I haven't shared it yet because I want to make sure it's all there. Once I've verified it's complete, the entirety of the treasurer's Google Drive instance will be shared with the remainder of the board. We get quarterly contributions from Amazon Smile, and 2 contributions have thus far netted us about $65.50 on about $13,100 of purchases through Amazon, made through smile.amazon.com. The next quarterly income distribution should be received once we change financial institutions. While it's estimated that the income won't change, it is estimated that the delivery schedule of those quarterly EFTs into the account might change. And finally, I've sent an email out to the Innovative Users Group's business manager, Kathy O'Gorham. It used to make no sense to me why they had a business manager and a treasurer. And now that I'm doing all of this legwork and getting things set up, it's coming screaming into focus as to why you want a business manager. So I've sent her a request to see if she'd be willing to talk to the Finance Committee and answer some of our questions. I sent that message out late last week. As of this morning, I had not yet heard from her. Any questions or topics for discussion?
John, you do good work.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you very much.
Agreed.
We should give you a raise.
Yeah.
I gladly accept. Let's see, what's that 20%?
At least double.
Yeah, I think we should at least double it.
Yep.
Of course, you have to give attention to that to the group.
A PDF of these will go to Jason after the meeting's over. So if you'd like to take a more detailed look at the slides I just whizzed on by, you'll be able to go to the minutes and see the full slide deck there. Candace and Jason continue their help. I thank them for their assistance, particularly as I will have them review the budget narrative before I submit it to the board, and their continued work on the reporting and compliance issues.
Incredible, John.
And that's all I got. So I'll stop sharing now if I can figure out how the hell to maximize. Oh, it's up there.
Sorry, everything froze up on me for a second. That was weird. You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So I missed the last little bit that you said there, John. Sorry about that.
Candace and Jason continue to work with me. They're assisting me with the review for compliance and reporting, and they'll get the budget narrative for review before I send it off to the board. They're earning their keep as Finance Committee members, and I thank them for their assistance.
Okay. Great. John, thank you so much. Again, you guys do a fantastic job. You are just killing it here, and we're looking to keep you on forever. So.
Yeah, really.
Thank you very much.
All right. We're not going to open up the table since we're running out of time here for bugs and such. Wanted to find out if there's any last announcements or concerns before we head out. Yes, Nate.
Real quick, Marshall Brenning's perception survey's out. So if you use Koha and you want to
already done it.
Good.
Oh yes, I got to do that.
Yeah, the more people that respond, the better the software looks. We want to go head to head with these other systems and show the world that Koha is awesome.
Absolutely.
So we appreciate that. That's it.
All right. Anyone else?
I'm putting some links in the chat window there for the upcoming documentation community IRC meeting and the general meeting on the 15th and the developers meeting on the 29th. The general meeting this morning, there were only like 12 people there, but it's where a lot of decisions are made about Koha. It wouldn't kill any of us to go and attend these meetings, and so we're involved in the community too. So
yeah.
Particularly the interesting ones I'm finding are the documentation meetings where people are talking about how to make the documentation better and what we can do to make the manual, useful for people. So it's not a requirement. Nobody's going to get, thrown out of the group for not attending these meetings, but the more people that attend these meetings, the more input there is, the better it's going to be. So
great. All right. Anything else? All right. Well, I move that we. Well, actually, let's look at the calendar. Let's confirm our next meeting date. I have December 13th.
That's what I have.
Yep.
All right.
And that's what I've got the room scheduled for, it looks like. So.
All right. So same time, December 13th.
It's the second day of Hanukkah.
All right. All right. So I move that we close the meeting for today.
Seconded.
All right, excellent. Guys, thank you very much for coming to the meeting, and we'll see you next month, and look forward to great things, and hopefully we'll have more on the website.
Jason, you'll send out a reminder?
For the meeting? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
All right, guys.
Have a good day, everybody.